fun and games on the Bryan Lunduke forum. So, it's been quite a while since I've made an episode of this series of recordings, and I've decided to go old school. I am down the back of my parents' property, under a pine tree. They've got a poodle now. That's actually been one of the reasons why I haven't been recording much. She can be an interruption, but at the moment she is chasing rabbits, or he's trying to track them down. She nearly flushed out a young hare. Well, she flushed out but failed to catch young hare a few minutes ago. Anyway, so the software journalist or computer journalist Bryan Lunduke has a very divisive reputation. Personally, I appreciate that there is someone willing to be the bearer of bad news in the world of open source software. And I appreciate that he has gone completely audience funded, no deals with companies that might, sway what he has to, what he can and can't talk about. Anyway, there is a perception that his audience is full of, oh so hateful people, and honestly, you know what we're doing at the moment? We are cloning Microsoft Notepad in as many ways as possible, over and over. So what had happened was that Microsoft made an, quote, enhanced version of Notepad, the most simple app that they had mostly right 40 years ago or so. It's been there since before Windows was deemed to be an operating system in its own right, back when it was an extension on MS-DOS. And in this enhanced edition, it wasn't just a text editor, it was also a markdown document viewer. Hope that breeze coming through doesn't mess up the sound too much. Waveforms look mostly fine. Anyway, so this got I can't remember what CVE stands for, but it is an officially disclosed security vulnerability that it was, when it was functioning as a markdown document viewer, there was a risk that it would load pieces of programming off of the internet without checking what they were and executing them. This is as bad as it gets, and it's Notepad. It is a very simple program that is very, very useful because you just put letters into it and keep them. You just type in and save it as a file. So, one of the people in the forum, Greg Gouthier, who in a forum full of computer curmudgeons, is perhaps the most curmudgeonly of us. He declared that he had done it. He had written his own version of the classic Notepad to ensure that there will always be a simple version available. Then someone else, who goes by the screen name Chungi, and by the way, this forum is paywalled. You're getting I'm leaking exclusive content here. Chungi remembered having actually written a clone of Notepad years ago, I think, as an exercise in learning Pascal and the Lazarus IDE, and we all oohed and ahed at how many operating systems, including very old ones, that it would run nicely on. I think someone else at that point made a joke about re-implementing Notepad in Forth, which is a language used mainly for writing firmware. Your BIOS screen and all that sort of thing. And Lulu, she's technically a quarter Cocker Spaniel, but she's 3/4 poodle and very poodleish. She has worn herself out with all her hunting. Anyway, so this is something I'm realising about my personality, is that as much as I do feel a compulsion to make things, I think what I'm actually better at is taking all of these shiny ideas and piling them up in to sort of a treasure trove of abstractions and observations that someone who is more judicious than I am can hopefully find something useful in. And yeah, so that tendency of mine kicked in, and honestly I just thought it was funny. I announced that we are having Clone Notepad Week, and I made a checklist of programming languages from the sensible to the absurd without any of them actually being joke languages. Like I put in Prolog, and that is a rather obscure programming language that is very narrowly specialized in the kind of Aristotelian logic that, or technically predicate logic, that you see in a Venn diagram. And getting it to do anything else is quite a struggle, but it does that exceptionally well. As well as C#, as Greg had already done. And yeah, at last count, we are at about 10 or 11 different implementations that are finished. I am working towards having an F# implementation, which is good research for language design. And boy, I have to say, Lee Harrington has done nearly half of the implementations, and he's been using it as a way to benchmark an AI code generation methodology he's come up with. And I'm really glad that my tendency to pile the shiny ideas into a heap and making a checklist of programming languages that was driven more by whimsy than anything else turned into something that was legitimately useful for him. He did credit me on the forum as giving him motivation to do something he never thought he would be able to do. So yeah, in a matter of days in his spare time, he churned out, I think, 4 different implementations using programming languages he had never used before. There was a pretty sensible C# implementation that used an official Microsoft library rather than the one that Greg used. There was one for the DOS prompt written in Zig, which is a language contending to replace C as something very, very simple for writing operating systems in. There was another one that was a full graphical Windows app, also written in Zig, which, if I recall, even for such a simple app, was exceptionally small and fast executing. And there was one that came in under 500 lines of code for Linux, written in Forth, that somebody had joked about, that for an interface used explicit virtual console signals, which is hard work, and the kind of thing few people are crazy enough to do. And when they do it, they make it a library so it can be used in multiple programs rather than just one. But yeah, he found that there's a methodology which I'll have to post a link to his write-up about his experience with it. His methodology, he managed to detach the problem of giving a sufficiently defined definition of what the program should and should not do from the question of how difficult it is to actually write the program. So, yeah, he got it to... He was writing... this is what it will be documents in sufficient detail that if presented to the AI in a particular manner, which I think first involved turning into a series of concrete steps. And actually he was using multiple AIs in conjunction with each other. But yeah, a set of 3 AI agents would get the code written up pretty pronto, and you know, this is a legitimately useful program, even if it is a bit on the small side. Extremely general purpose. Yeah. He could specify an easy-to-use programming language or a difficult-to-use programming language, and it made pretty much no difference to him in terms of how difficult it would be, because he's cracked how to get these artificial intelligences to do exactly what he wants them to do. So, yeah, that is what actually goes on the Bryan Lunduke forum for the most part. We do also, have our discussions about the Rust programming language being cry bullies or neo-Jacobins, call them what you will. It's not that we even hate... It's generally held amongst us that Rust actually is a very good idea for a programming language, but we think that there is a human factor problem of prevalent unstable personalities with unrecognized authority who refuse to recognize in themselves some extremely authoritarian impulses. And they also don't differentiate between Rust being a good idea and in the abstract, and Rust as they actually use it in the real world. Because there have been a number of high-profile cases of Rust programs being badly put together. And you try criticizing how they've used it, and they say, well, the language is faultless. It's memory safe, don't you know? Memory safety is not the issue. Anyway. So that's all for now. I really should be making an advertisement. Actually, no. I really should be making an advertisement for something that I have made myself. But for the purposes of this minute, over and out.